The books of 4 Ezra, also called 2 Esdras, and Daniel predicted 2042 as the year Jesus will return to earth to conclude the 12,000 years from creation and the 6,000 years of the human era, and to usher in the 1,000 years of God on earth. There are 12 equations to pinpoint the final year, 2042. This video will discuss the 2 equations in the book of 2 Esdras only. The other 10 equations are presented in our other YouTube videos and in the book 2042, The End. Prophet Ezra wrote the book 2 Esdras around 2,500 years ago, in which angel Uriel disclosed 2042 as the end of the world. He told Ezra to write 94 books and to make known to the general public the first 24 books. But the final 70 books must be given to the wise among his people, who will be able to understand the apocalyptic visions contained in these last books. Chapters 10 and 14 in the book of 2 Esdras reveal 2042 as the final year of humanity on earth. First, angel Uriel revealed that there are 3,000 years from the creation of Adam to the time King Solomon completed the first temple in 959 BC, and another 3,000 years from 959 BC to the end in 2042. As a result, Adam was created in 3,959 BC, and the 6,000 years will end exactly in 2042. The final 1,000 years belong to the Millenium Kingdom of God on earth. Secondly, angel Uriel also revealed that the earth will reach 12,000 years old exactly in 2042. The first 6,000 years represent the 6 days of creation, from 9,959 BC to 3,959 BC, and the second 6,000 years represent the human era, from 3,959 BC to 2042. God created Adam in the year 3,959 BC, and it is the midpoint of the 12,000-year period, as shown in the time chart. We will discuss the accuracy of this prophecy later in the video using the tree ring records or the Dendrochronology method. According to 2 Esdras, chapters 10 and 14, year 2042 is the final year of the 6,000-year cycle of men on earth. 3,000 years from the creation of Adam to the time King Solomon completed the first temple in 959 BC, plus another 3,000 years from the first temple in 959 BC to the final temple that Jesus will usher in at his second coming in 2042. This calculation is based on the 7 days of creation and the 6,000 years of men on earth. The final period is the 1,000 years of rest and peace on earth to complete the 7,000-year period. The 6,000-year theory was common to Jews and Christians. It came from various Jewish writings, such as the books of Enoch, 4 Ezra, the Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar in 2 Esdras, chapter 10, verses 44 to 46. Angel Uriel mentioned that there were 3,000 years from Adam to the time Solomon dedicated the first temple to God in 959 BC. Thus, the next 3,000 years will end exactly in 2042, the same year as calculated by the other equations from our previous videos. For the list of the previous videos, click on the heptad icon or channel. The book of 2 Esdras, chapter 9, verse 38 to chapter 10, verse 59, Greek version, recorded Ezra's vision of a barren woman as a mirror image of the nation of Israel. She had been married for 30 years, but had no children. Every day, she had pleaded to God for a son. After 30 years, God answered her prayer and gave her a son. She praised God for her son and watched him grow up. He became a man and was ready for public services. So, she got him a wife. Tragically, on the wedding night, he fell down and died. This incident devastated the mother, and she just wanted to die. While she was lamenting for her son, the prophet Ezra met her and told her that she should not be lamenting about the death of her son, but be lamenting about the temple, because the Babylonians had destroyed Jerusalem city and its temple. If she listened to Ezra and mourned for the city, she would get her son back in due time, as written in 2nd Esdras. Chapter 10, verse 16. The conversation went on until the barren woman suddenly disappeared, and in her place appeared a new Jerusalem temple, not built by men. Ezra was so perplexed about the incident. Then angel Uriel came and explained the vision to him, as recorded in the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 10, verses 44 to 50. This woman, whom thou saw, is Sion, or Jerusalem, whom thou now see as a city built. And whereas she said unto thee that she hath been 30 years barren, it is because there were 3,000 years in the world, wherein there was no offering as yet offered in her. And it came to pass after 3,000 years that Solomon built the city, and offered offerings. Then it was that the barren bears a son, and whereas she told thee that she nourished him with travail, that was the dwelling in Jerusalem. And whereas she said unto thee, my son coming into his marriage chamber died, and that misfortune befell her, this was the destruction that came to Jerusalem. And behold, thou saw her likeness, how she mourned for her son, and thou began to comfort her for what hath befallen her. These were the things to be opened unto thee. For now the Most High, seeing that thou art grieved unfeignedly, and suffered from thy whole heart for her, hath showed thee the brightness of her glory, and the comeliness of her beauty. For the most accurate translation of 2nd Esdras, chapter 9, verse 38 to chapter 10, verse 58, use the version translated from Hebrew to Greek, instead of the Latin version. These are interpretations of the vision. According to angel Uriel in 2nd Esdras, chapter 10, verse 45, the 30 years of waiting to have a son is the actual 3,000 years from Adam to the time Solomon completed the first temple to God and made the first animal sacrifice in the temple, as recorded in history for the year 959 BC. The barren woman and the son in the vision are the city of Jerusalem and its temple, respectively. The son was born after 30 years, representing 3,000 years from Adam to the time Solomon completed the first temple in 959 BC. The event of 959 BC discloses the year 3959 BC when God created Adam. Calculation: 3,000 years earlier plus 959 BC equals 3,959 BC. As a result, it also discloses 2042, the end of the 6,000 years of the human era, exactly as calculated by Daniel's 70-week equations. Calculation: 3,959 BC plus 6,000 years equals minus 3,959 plus 6,000 plus 1 equals 2042 AD. The 6,000-year cycle is the time from the first Adam to the second Adam, which is Jesus, who will return in 2042 to usher in the final 1,000 years of peace and rest on earth. The death of the Son is the destruction of the first temple and is also the death of the Messiah. The story does not indicate the age of the Son when he got married. However, we can guess, probably at the age of 30 according to the Mosaic law, especially for men to become priests and serve in God's temple. 30 years old is also the age of Jesus when he started his ministry and died 3 years later. In 2nd Esdras, chapter 10, verse 16, the barren woman getting her son back represents the New Jerusalem with its final temple to be completed by the Messiah in 2042, exactly 3,000 years later, from the first temple in 959 BC to the final temple in 2042. The year 959 BC is located perfectly in the middle of the 6,000-year cycle of humanity on earth. Therefore, the completion of Solomon's temple in 959 BC also divided history exactly into 2 equal periods of 3,000 years each. Jesus is the divider of human history between the Old and the New Testaments. He is also the first and the second Messiahs spoken of in rabbinical writings. Calculation: 959 BC plus 3,000 years equals minus 959 plus 3,000 years plus 1 year equals 2042 AD, plus 1 year is for the missing 0 year between 1 BC and 1 AD. Jesus also represents both the first and the last temples. One was physically destroyed because of the sin of the people, and one was resurrected for the everlasting salvation of all believers. He will be the new temple not built by men, which will come down on Mount Zion in 2042. As written in 2 Esdras chapter 10, verses 53 to 56. Historical records indicate that Solomon started to construct the temple in 966 BC. 7 years later, he completed and dedicated the temple in 959 BC, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 38. From 959 BC, going backwards in time by 3,000 years, would reveal that 3,959 BC is the exact year God created Adam. From 3,959 BC, going forward 6,000 years, will reveal that 2042 is the exact final year of the human era on Earth. Adam's birth year, 959 BC minus 3,000 years, equals minus 959 minus 3,000, equals minus 3,959, or 3,959 BC, the end of 6,000 years. 3,959 BC plus 6,000 years equals minus 3,959 plus 6,000 plus 1 equals 2042 AD. Verification. 3,959 years plus 2042 minus 1 year equals 6,000 years. Using the equation for calculating total solar eclipses, mathematicians can determine the exact date of the total solar eclipse that happened on June 15, 763 BC in Nineveh City, as recorded on the Assyrians' cuneiform tablets. See NASA website for the calculations and the calendar years of past total solar eclipses. Based on the event of 763 BC and other events recorded in the Bible and in the Assyrian cuneiform tablets, one can pinpoint exactly 966 BC as the year Solomon started to build the first temple, and 1446 BC as the year of the Exodus. Researchers used different ways to determine these two historical dates, and the results were also the same. Therefore, 966 BC and 959 BC are the correct years for the construction and the completion of the temple, respectively. As a result, Ezra's first equation can be expressed as the following. Final year equals 3,959 BC plus 6,000 years equals minus 3,959 plus 6,000 plus 1 equals 2042 AD. Final year equals 959 BC plus 3,000 years equals minus 959 plus 3,000 plus 1 equals 2042 AD. Verification of the 3,000 years from Adam to the first temple using biblical genealogies. By adding the number of years from one generation to the next, particularly when a father begot a son, as mentioned in Genesis 5, one can calculate the total 2,083 years accumulated from Adam to the time Abraham left Haran. According to Genesis 5, from the creation of Adam to Terah's death, there was a total of 2,083 years as shown on the chart. Terah is the father of Abraham, and in the year Terah died, Abraham left Haran and went to Canaan, the promised land, where God first made a covenant with Abraham. Then, during the Great Famine, his children went down to Egypt and stayed there until the Exodus. This entire period from entering Canaan to the time of Exodus lasted exactly 430 years, as recorded in Exodus 12 verse 40, Septuagint 70, and Galatians 3 verses 16 to 17. By now, the total time from Adam to Exodus is 2,513 years, as calculated. 2,083 years plus 430 years equals 2,513 years. The next period, from the time of Exodus to the year Solomon started to build the temple, is 480 years, as stated in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. It took Solomon 7 years to complete the temple, as stated in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 38. So, this final period from Exodus to the time Solomon completed the temple is 487 years. 480 plus 7 equals 487. By adding this 487-year period to the previous 2,513-year period, the total number of years from Adam to the time Solomon completed the temple is exactly 3,000 years. Calculation: 2,513 years plus 487 years equals 3,000 years, exactly the same 3,000 years stated in the book of 2 Esdras, chapter 10, verse 45. Verification: 3,959 BC plus 3,000 years equals minus 3,959 plus 3,000 equals minus 959, or 959 BC. The remaining 3,000 years is the time from 959 BC to 2042, the end. Ezra's 12,000-year timeline from creation to the end in 2042. The book of 2 Esdras, chapter 14, verse 11, revealed a 12,000-year creation story. It started from the beginning in 9,959 BC to the end in 2042. The entire 12,000-year period comprises 12 parts, or 12 long days, of 1,000 years each. The 12,000-year period comprises 2 cycles of 6,000 years each. The first 6,000-year cycle describes the 6 days of creation similarly to the Genesis account, but with more details. A day is equivalent to a 1,000-year period, as mentioned in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The first 6,000-year cycle started from the first day of creation in 9,959 BC, and ended in 3,959 BC, the year God created Adam. The last 6,000-year cycle started in 3,959 BC, when Adam was created, and will end in 2042, when Jesus, the second Adam, will return to Earth. We do have a very reliable 10,000-year tree ring history to prove the case. 2 Esdras, chapter 14, verses 9 to 15. For you shall be taken up from among men, and henceforth you shall live with my Son, and with those who are like you, until the times are ended. For the age has lost its youth, and the times begin to grow old. For the age is divided into 12 parts, or 12,000 years, and 9 of its parts have already passed, as well as half of the 10th part, 9.5 parts have passed, or 9,500 years have passed. So 2 of its parts remain. Besides half of the 10th part, 2.5 parts remain, or 2,500 years remain. Now, therefore, set your house in order, and reprove your people. Comfort the lowly among them, and instruct those that are wise. And now renounce the life that is corruptible, and put away from you mortal thoughts. Cast away from you the burdens of man, and divest yourself now of your weak nature, and lay to one side the thoughts that are most grievous to you, and hasten to escape from these times. What we just read in 2 Esdras chapter 14, verses 10 to 12, revealed the 12 parts that make up the total 12,000 years from the first day of creation to the end in 2042. 9.5 parts, or 9,500 years, have already passed, and 2.5 parts, or 2,500 years, still remain at the time Ezra wrote the book. Note that Ezra, or Esdras, wrote the first book of Ezra around 458 BC, 14 years before Nehemiah wrote chapter 2 of Nehemiah. In 444 BC, the year King Artaxerxes decreed to restore Jerusalem. So, there are still 2,500 years remaining, from 458 BC to the end in 2042, which is equivalent to the final 2.5 parts. Calculation: 2.5 parts equals 458 BC to 2042 AD equals 458 plus 2042 minus 1 equals 2,499 years. Calculation: 2.5 parts equals 2,499 years remained, or 2,500 years rounded off. Therefore, 1 part equals 2,500 years divided by 2.5 parts equals 1,000 years per part. 12 parts equals 12 parts multiplied by 1,000 years per part equals 12,000 years total. 9.5 parts equals 9,500 years, and 2.5 parts equals 2,500 years. As mentioned earlier, 2nd Esdras, chapter 10, verses 44 to 46, revealed 3,959 BC as the birth year of Adam. Therefore, the first day of creation must have started 6,000 years before Adam was created, which is exactly in the year 9,959 BC. Calculation: the year creation started equals 6,000 years earlier, plus 3,959 BC equals 9,959 BC. Consequently, the end of the 12,000-year age must take place in 2042. Calculation: the year of the end equals 9,959 BC plus 12,000 years equals minus 9,959 plus 12,000 plus 1 equals 2042 AD. The 12,000-year timeline comprises 12 parts, with the year 3,959 BC as the midpoint. Part 1 to 6 starts from day 1 in 9,959 BC to the end of day 6 in 3,959 BC, the year God created Adam. Part 7 to 12 starts from 3,959 BC to the end of the 6,000-year era of men in 2042. During the first 6,000 years of the creation period, the angel revealed to Ezra about the process of how God created the dry land, the sea, and the atmosphere for life to exist before he created the living world. From fruit trees to dinosaurs, fish, birds, land animals, creeping things, and lastly, Adam and Eve. Each day is a long process of 1,000 years, not 24 hours as traditionally believed. For example, on the 6th day, or from year 5,000 to year 6,000, God created different kinds of animals and creeping things before he created Adam. God brought these creatures to Adam so that he could name them one by one, and it took Adam a long time to name all of these creatures. Therefore, a creation day is not a 24-hour day as commonly believed, but a 1,000-year period. The second 6,000-year cycle encompasses the entire history of men from the year Adam was created in 3,959 BC to the second coming of Jesus, the Messiah, in 2042. Following is the summary of the 12,000-year timeline from the first part of creation to the end of the 12th part. 2nd Esdras, chapter 6, verses 38 to 54, describe the first 6 days of creation, 1,000 years for each day, or 6,000 years for all 6 days. Day 1 started from year 0 to year 1,000, as written in 2nd Esdras, chapter 6, verses 38 to 40. God created the heaven, the earth, and the light on the first day, or the first 1,000 years. The earth was completely covered with water on the first day of creation. It seems like God created the universe first, including the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all other planets in the first 1,000 years. This is the initial 1,000-year period, starting from the years 0 to 1,000, or from 9,959 BC to 8,959 BC, and it is also the first part of the 12-part or 12,000-year process, from 9,959 BC to 2042. Calculation: 9,959 plus 2,042 minus 1 equals 12,000 years. Day 2 started from year 1,000 to year 2,000, as written in 2nd Esdras chapter 6, verse 41. God created the firmament and moved a large part of the water up unto the sky and kept the remaining water on the earth. This is the second 1,000-year period in which God created the sky and the environment for life to arrive. The Earth's atmosphere was saturated with vapors, steam, particles, and gases during this second period. This second period started from the years 1000 to 2000, or from 8959 BC to 7959 BC. Day 3 started from year 2000 to year 3000, as written in 2nd Esdras chapter 6, verses 42 to 44. God divided the water from the land. He kept the seventh part, or 1/7, of the earth's surface covered with water, or about 14% of Earth's surface was water. Then he dried off the 6 remaining parts, or 6/7, of the Earth's surface to make dry land for the growing of trees, vegetation, and plants, or about 86% of Earth's surface was dry land. Trees, vegetation, and plants sprung up on the dry land according to their kinds for the production of extra oxygen in the early atmosphere. This is the third 1,000-year period, or the third part of the 12-part process. This third period spans from the years 2000 to 3000, or from 7959 BC to 6959 BC. Comments on days 1 to 3. The first 3,000 years from 9959 BC to 6959 BC. The first 3 days are the first 3,000 years, during which God created the Earth's environment for trees and vegetation to grow and to produce additional oxygen for life to exist, before God brought forth the birds, fish, animals, and humans on the 5th and 6th days, from year 4000 to 6000. Note that in the beginning, the earth was completely covered with water. To evaporate the water upward and dry up the land, God had to crank up the heat inside the earth to make it happen. He also opened up the earth's surface to bury the water deep into the earth. These physical processes during the first 2,000 years were very violent and catastrophic. Multiple volcanic eruptions and earthquakes happened very frequently to shape the earth's surface and to move the water upward as clouds, and also downward as deep streams. These processes were repeated many times in days or months. As a result, many layers of rocks and sediments on the surface of the earth were rapidly formed. Therefore, it is not possible to determine the age of the earth by counting rock layers or polar ice layers, because of multiple layers of rock and ice were formed rapidly during these early days. From volcanic eruptions, carbon dioxide and oxygen were created. Plenty of carbon dioxide, but not enough oxygen in the early atmosphere for life to exist yet. To clean up the CO2 and produce more oxygen, God created a lot of trees, plants, and vegetation to do the process of photosynthesis, in which trees and green plants suck in rich and abundant carbon dioxide from the early air and release oxygen into the air. Therefore, God made 86% of Earth's surface available for trees and plants to accomplish the task on the third day. The photosynthesis continued on the third and the fourth days, 2,000 years total, until trees and plants produced enough oxygen for birds and fish to arrive on the 5th day. Trees are resilient. They can survive harsh environments and continue to grow on the surface of the earth without any interruption. When a tree dies, it leaves its death and birth certificates imprinted on the tree rings. Based on the tree rings, we can tell the age of the earth with confidence, and it is 12,000 years, not 4.5 billion years, as promoted by the evolutionists. Evolution from non-life to life is impossible and unscientific. The math does not support the theory. Science and DNA prove the impossibility of it. Day 4 started from year 3000 to year 4000, as written in 2nd Esdras chapter 6, verses 45 to 46. God placed the sun, the moon, and the stars in the heavens to mark the day, the night, the hour, the month, the season, the year, and the 4 directions of earth. At this time, the atmosphere was finally clear for the sun, the moon, and the stars to become visible. On the 4th day, it seems like God arranged the orbits of the sun, the moon, planets, stars, and the earth into the correct positions to tell time, seasons, and directions for navigation and migration. This is the 4th 1,000-year period, or the fourth part of the 12-part process. This fourth period spans from the years 3000 to 4000, or from 6959 BC to 5959 BC. Day 5 started from year 4000 to year 5000, as written in 2 Esdras chapter 6, verses 47 to 52. On the fifth day, God commanded the seventh, or 1/7, surface area of the earth, where the water had been gathered together, to bring forth living creatures, birds, and fishes. The two big living creatures were Leviathan and Behemoth. God created these two giant creatures first. He let Leviathans live in the ocean, the smaller part of earth, 1/7. However, he let Behemoths live on dry land, the larger part of earth, 6/7. This is the fifth 1,000-year period described in 2 Esdras chapter 14, verse 11, as the fifth part of the 12-part, or 12,000-year process. The fifth part spans from the years 4000 to 5000, or from 5959 BC to 4959 BC. Behemoth was probably the common name of various types of dinosaurs that were extinct during Noah's flood. These animals were created at the same time as birds, so their bones were also constructed with many air sacs, like those of birds. With that type of light bones, they were able to grow to enormous sizes and to move swiftly. Since God created the dinosaurs early on the fifth day and man late on the sixth day, the time gap between the two species must be around 2,000 years apart. During the first couple of weeks of Noah's flood, most dinosaurs with their big legs were stuck in mud because of their enormous weights and not enough water buoyancy in the first couple of weeks of rain to lift their bodies up. Therefore, they were buried in sediments quickly and became fossilized, while humans were able to swim and float due to their lightweight bodies. That's why you don't see fossilized dinosaurs and humans buried together. As in the beginning, the earth was completely covered with water during Noah's flood. After the flood, God decided to reduce the dry land surface area down to 29% and increase the water's surface area up to 71%, as we observe today. The flood buried a lot of trees and vegetation. As a consequence, today we found a lot of oil under the ocean's floor, close to the shorelines. These shallow waters used to be woodlands full of living trees and plants, now buried under water and under many layers of sediments. 4,300 years have gone by since Noah's flood, and these trees and vegetation have become crude oil and coal for our energy consumption today. Day 6 started from year 5000 to year 6000, as written in 2 Esdras chapter 6, verses 53 to 54. On the sixth day, or the sixth 1,000-year period, God created the cattle, the beasts of the field, the creeping things, and the first human. He created Adam and his wife, Eve, to rule over his creation. This is the sixth part of the total 12 parts, from creation to the end. This period spans from the years 5000 to 6000, or from 4959 BC to 3959 BC. By now, the first 6 days of the creation story had been completed. The first 6 days are the first 6,000-year period, which began 12,000 years ago in 9959 BC, and was completed 6,000 years ago in 3959 BC, the year Adam was created. Then God rested on the seventh day. For more details regarding the first 6 days of creation, refer to section 2.12 from the book 2042, The End. Days 7 to 12, or parts 7 to 12, the final 6,000 years from Adam, 3959 BC, to the end, 2042. The final 6 parts, or the final 6,000 years, belong to the human era. It started from the year Adam was created in 3959 BC and will end in 2042, the year Jesus will return to earth as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This 6,000-year period is documented thoroughly in the Bible and in our history. It can be divided into two 3,000-year periods as mentioned earlier in Ezra's 6,000-year cycle, from 3,959 BC to 2042. In the year 2042, the 12-part cycle, or the 12,000-year creation history, will end. All God's people who die before Jesus returns will be resurrected to be with him during the final 1,000 years of peace on earth. The rest of the dead people will be resurrected and face God's judgment after the 1,000-year period. Then the final world will come for all, some to everlasting life, and some to everlasting contempt, as mentioned in Daniel 12 verse 2 and Revelation 20 verse 15. The 12,000-year history of Earth is consistent with many archaeological findings for the past 10,000 years. Surely, we do have a very reliable tree ring history, and the calculations to prove that God created the world in 9,959 BC, and he will conclude the human era in 2042. The 10,000-year history of the tree ring has been God's yearly journal, written on wood all these years. Interestingly, today we also write our history on wood pulp paper. The tree ring records also prove that the trees were created on the third day, or the third millennium of the 12-part creation, exactly 10,000 years ago, as marked on the time chart. Ezra's second equation can be expressed as the following. Final year equals 9,959 BC plus 12,000 years, equals minus 9,959 plus 12,000 plus 1, equals 2042 AD. Verification. 9,959 BC to 2042 AD equals 9,959 plus 2042 minus 1 equals 12,000 years. Tree ring dating method. Tree ring dating method, or Dendrochronology, is the science or technique of dating events, environmental change, and archaeological artifacts by using the characteristic patterns of annual growth rings in timber and tree trunks. Trees grow a new layer of wood each year, creating concentric rings visible in a cross-section of the trunk. Each ring represents 1 year of the tree's life. Certain trees can live for thousands of years without sunlight due to their unique adaptations and genetic traits. The patterns of wide and narrow rings within a tree serve as a chronological record of past climate conditions. Scientists interpret these patterns to reconstruct historical climate fluctuations, including periods of drought, unusually wet seasons, and temperature shifts. Tree rings also recorded other historical events. Volcanic eruptions can appear as narrower rings due to cooler global temperatures caused by atmospheric ash. Furthermore, wood from historical buildings or archaeological sites can be dated, providing precise construction timelines and details about past human activity. Cross-dating involves matching the patterns of wide and narrow rings between multiple tree samples. This process accounts for variations in individual tree growth and helps identify any missing or false rings. By overlapping ring patterns from living trees, historical timber, and ancient wood, scientists build continuous master chronologies that extend thousands of years into the past for specific regions and tree species. Tree dating extends back thousands of years, with some master chronologies spanning up to 10,000 years. Today, we have a library of tree rings reliable and accurate up to 10,000 years. Above that level, we don't have reliable wood samples to go beyond. According to Ezra's 12,000-year creation story, God created the trees on the third day, which is between 9 and 10,000 years ago. If God created the trees early on the third day, then the 10,000-year history of the tree rings proves exactly that the age of the oldest tree must have been 10,000 years by now. For more details regarding the age of the Earth and the 10 additional equations for calculating the year 2042, download the book 2042 The End at finalyearsofcivilization.com. If you like the video, please subscribe and click the like button so others can see the video also. Thank you.